This week on the Orange Box Podcast, we talk about the ridiculous PC system requirements for the upcoming LEGO Batman game, the Steam Machine or Steam Frame potentially coming very soon, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to the new Beautiful Bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 135. I am your host, the man who, with his face and nose so bright, was asked to guide Santa's sleigh tonight, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man who... Justin, better known as... There we go. Apparently I forgot to write down your intro.
Keep it.
Yeah. How you doing today? How's your week been?
I've just been, but it's been not a bad week. It's been still pretty much, I would say, a normal week, not too eventful. My friend who I mentioned last week, who had been having issues with his computer, more so specifically his mouse and keyboard, he came back and told me that he just wanted to test things out and try connecting his mouse and keyboard to his Steam Deck dock and just to see, try using on there. And he said that there were issues even using those on there. And he tried using up a backup mouse and that didn't work. So I'm really wondering what could be the issue then, if it's not just like, because initially he thought maybe it's like an issue with I can't remember what he said, but some sort of header on the motherboard, and I was like, I don't know, honestly. I mean, I would have to like troubleshoot stuff in person to do that, so I'm not entirely certain what it could be, if there's issues he's having with even using it on the Steam Deck, because I've never had problems with using my mouse on my Steam Deck before, so I can't really say what the issue is. I don't know. I know at one point I do want to go over and see him just to do some troubleshooting, but that's going to be for at least a little bit before I can do that. But I'm still going to see what happens on that end and try to think of what could be happening with him. But then, of course, the other big thing that happened was today was the release of the Steam controller, and that was, as you well know, a very tense time. Initially I was even a bit concerned because even before, like, I just trying to just get to the page a couple minutes beforehand. In fact, I almost forgot to even check when I was getting close to one. But I saw, it said out of stock. I'm thinking to myself, how is it not even 1 o'clock yet, or 10 a.m. Pacific time, and not how are we already out of stock? But then once I refreshed the page at 1, then it was working. But then as I was getting to check out the order, because I was easily able to add to the carts, then I kept getting a processing error, even though I had been using the Steam wallet and not using my card, like some people have been advising, saying to do that so you wouldn't have any issues with payments. And then that was just an issue, and I kept trying to check it, refresh, and then I even was like, all right, let me try using my phone. I did that, and then for a while, I was even just alternating with one hand on my laptop, just hitting continue, on my right hand, have my phone, hitting continue, and then eventually, I guess I got through, and I was able to put my order in, so glad that was secured, but that was definitely not the best thing that could have been happening. I don't know what the issue was, but I guess Valve needs to look into that, because that shouldn't have been an issue. But that is everything that's happened with me.
Yeah, well, I'll get to mine. Mine wasn't drastically different from yours from the standpoint of the controller, but I guess first of all, very obviously for those who are watching the video version, my forehead especially and my nose are both very red because I got very sunburned on Saturday when we did our garage sale. And it's obviously just because I wasn't really thinking about the fact that since I was going to be outside so much, I needed to get and put on sunscreen. And so I didn't. And so I have, like a white outline around my eyes because I was wearing my sunglasses, and then my nose and my forehead and the back of my neck and tops of my hands and stuff are burnt. And of course, the lighting of this camera is not really helping anything. It's making it look much more dramatically red. Even though it definitely hasn't healed as much as I would like. So it is what it is. Just have to wait for it to heal. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten around to picking up some sunscreen to help with the healing process. So I'm just kind of waiting and hoping that maybe tomorrow it'll be at least a bit better, even without having put on sunscreen. But either way, at the very least, we'll make sure that we pick some up soon. Beyond that, well, one thing that I forgot to mention last week that was pretty significant was we had a tornado warning go off on Sunday night. And it was at like 10 o'clock, I think. Yeah, it was about 10 o'clock. So we were like just getting ready to go to bed. I mean, we were just about to get ready to go to bed. Then the sirens went off, and my in-laws were still here at the time. And so they went into the laundry room, which is the only other room we have in the house that's like away from walls and windows and everything, but is, closed in. So they went in there with the dogs, and then the rest of us went in the safe room because there was just not enough room for all of us. And we ended up having to stay in there for about an hour, but the kids had fallen asleep, and so it was like a little more difficult to get them out of bed. Like my oldest, I went in there, I'm like, well, my boys, my middle son, I told him we need to get up, and it took a second, but then he got up. My oldest, I told him he needs to get out of bed. Tornado sirens are going off. We need to go to the safe room. And he like rolls over for a second, and then he rolls back down and tries to go back to sleep. And I'm like, no, you have to get out of bed. And long story short, it doesn't seem like anything necessarily touched down, but there was a funnel cloud. Not close to us, but just like, I want to say it was probably about 20, 30 miles out. And it was just kind of very slow moving through. And I don't know if it did much of any damage, but it probably did a little bit. So, I mean, yeah, it didn't affect us apart from the fact that we had to go in the safe room for a bit, but it was more of an annoyance than anything else. But going back to the Steam controller thing, earlier today, I had like just barely gotten on the page, like just a little bit before noon, Central Time. And like initially it wasn't showing up, and then you sent me the message saying that it was already out of stock. And then I refreshed the page, and then I must have gotten it like right at noon, and I was able to hit click buy now, and it got added to my cart. But then, of course I had added the Steam wallet funds and everything. When I got to the billing details screen, I keep hitting continue, and it would just keep giving that same error message over and over and over. And it took about 30 minutes, but then I finally got it to go through. Finally got to the next screen, and then was able to complete the purchase. One of my coworkers told me that I knew he was also trying to get one, and unfortunately he wasn't able to before it went out of stock. He kept having the same errors as well, so I'm glad that at least you and I both managed to get one. But because of the fact that I knew, well, I figured that chances were good that it probably would not show up here in time before I left. I just went ahead and had it shipped to my in-laws. So that way, whenever it actually ships, it'll just go directly to their house. And then even if it happened to arrive, Thursday, in which case I could have gotten it here, the fact that it's going to go to their place means that, I'll have access to it whenever it arrives, assuming that it arrives in time. If I get to like 3 to 5 days before it's supposed to arrive or before we're leaving, then I will probably just go ahead and change the destination back to my place, the shipping destination. So really just have to kind of work it out from that standpoint, but there are potentials for delays because of how incredibly overloaded they got. I know scalpers are already selling them online for ridiculous prices, and or at least trying to sell them. And I hope that Valve has something worked out to make it so that there's less of an ability for people to do that, or rather that they get more stock in so that people don't have to resort to going to eBay or whatever in order to try and get one when they really could just wait and then get one later on. Because I don't want scalpers to get the best of people, especially when they're charging. One of them I saw was like $265 for one controller, and it's like, come on. I mean, obviously, you know, that's the whole reason why they bought them. And I think, like, I understand why Valve did seem to set a limit of 3, because then it's like, okay, you get 3, and then if you buy a Steam machine, then you get a 4th one, and then that you have the maximum number that you can do on a single puck. But yeah, I kind of wish that they had just set it to 1 per account. I don't know if that necessarily would have fixed everything, but it could have at least made it so there were more people could have actually gotten one. So it is what it is. But apart from all that, this Friday we're heading into, we're going to start our trip out to Wyoming, and we'll be gone for a couple weeks. But we have someone from church, house and dog sitting, pet sitting for us. So they'll be around and able to take care of everything for us while we're gone. So that's good. It's a relief having someone we know is very trustworthy and responsible. So I'm looking forward to the trip, especially because this year we actually have a much more reliable car that's not going to have AC issues, God willing. I mean, it shouldn't, considering the fact that it's a much newer vehicle and has a lot fewer miles on it. Honestly, the biggest thing that I'm not entirely sure about is how we're going to fit everything in exactly. Like, all of the seats behind the driver and passenger seat, the front seats, all of them can fold down into the car so that you can make a lot of foot room. I mean, even the middle seats can actually fold down into the floor. That's one thing that the Pacifica does that no other minivan does. And so it's like we're going to fold down a couple of the back seats in order to make some extra room, and then, you know, the back already has a bit more room anyway because it's deeper. So there'll be like various things we can do to make that work, but it's still always just kind of a little bit of a challenge. And of course, because this is a completely different vehicle than the one I've packed the past few times that we've gone out there, it's just figuring out the exact layout of how I want to arrange everything that I haven't quite decided on yet. So, but yeah, that's pretty much everything other than gaming stuff.
Well, I definitely hope you have a good trip and you enjoy it. And I'm glad that everyone was safe on Sunday and that nothing major actually happens in the storm.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are a gaming podcast, so let's get into what you've been playing this week.
So I started thinking about it, some stuff. I said, you know what? I really need to go back to Hades 2 and finish that. So I went back and started that, and unfortunately at the time I didn't realize I wasn't recording until near the end of my run. But when I first booted up the game, I saw something had happened, and there was a cutscene with Hypnos and saying like, "Hey, we've got a new challenge for you." And I was like, I don't recall Nathan mentioning about like a new sleep challenge. So I went in and started doing that, and essentially it's just a 4-round run with random areas. So far I think they're right now only in the underworld. No, actually no, they are actually in both the underworld and the overworld. So it's like four random regions that you go through. Whatever weapons and item, or I think, yeah, whatever weapons and items, and I think also whether keepsakes and everything else you have on you, you can bring with you. But there are, can't remember what like certain things. I know you can't do any type of while you can get boons and stuff like that, you can't talk to anyone, so you can't gift them anything or build relationships that way. So it's just a way to run through and just do a random run. Unfortunately, I had some issues with mine. I think just because at the time I wasn't prepared to actually jump immediately into a run. I was sort of just thrust into it, and so I didn't actually have a build that was really prepped up for anything. And also some of the boons I got weren't really all that great to begin with. But it was interesting. It was different. So I mean, I don't think there's anything related to that in the achievements that I've seen. So
no,
I might give it a shot again.
I've never even seen that at all.
Okay.
I'm wondering if that's either something that like popped up and I just didn't see it because I hadn't looked for it, or if it's something that they added after I finished the game.
That's definitely a possibility that it's just like a update thing, because I do know there was at least one update I had seen that happened some time ago, so that could be something related to that. But yeah, so I might give it a shot. Otherwise, I'll probably just keep going with my normal stuff for the game. But yeah, so I didn't really do too much there. And then next thing I did was I started playing Alan Wake, and it's an interesting game to say the least. It's for one thing, it's a whole lot more, I guess, story focused than I thought it was going to be going into it, which I think just going through a playthrough is like just normal playthrough. That's completely fine. I have no issue with that. The biggest thing I technically have with it is I was going to have that be like the first video, or be the part of my video series. So I'm like, in a game that's really more so focused on the story, I don't know how well this would work into making a video, since if anyone's watching, they're not going to be, they're going to want to be invested in the story, and it's not like I'm going to be doing like a full complete 100% playthrough or anything like that. It's just like, hey, here's parts of the game, here's me playing through the game here and there and whatnot. So I'm gonna see what I want to do with that, if I even might want to just continue playing the game by myself and then just get another a game with the letter A and have that be part of the video. So I'm just gonna decide for right now. I mean, I've recorded some stuff up until I only really played about 45 minutes of the game before like there was a crash, but fortunately it's like right after I reached a checkpoint, so no big deal there. But yeah, I'll see what I do there. But overall, I mean, I think the game's very interesting. I think it's pretty fun. It's definitely interesting. I initially, just to make sure I didn't mess things up with the recording, I sort of just plugged my headphones directly into my computer and stuff, but then I realized I also turned the volume down. I was like, I can barely hear anything, so I went to turn things up later on, because I was like, I don't want anything like loud jumping into my ear. But it's not bad. I think overall, though, I kind of like the idea and the theme, which, I mean, I think the game opens up with a Stephen King quote, and I'm just like, just looking at the opening sort of prologue, I'm like, this feels very Stephen King-esque, anyway. So I'm like, that's very interesting. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting game, and I'm glad I finally got around to at least starting the game. And I do want to see where this goes, so I'm gonna at least play through it by myself, if not actually use this for the video. And then, in light of today being May the 4th, Star Wars Day, I decided to go back and play the very first Star Wars game that I was introduced to, and that was Super Return of the Jedi on the Super Nintendo. And I guess the funniest thing is that I really don't know too much about, or at least as a child, I really didn't know too much about this game because the only level I knew was the first level of the game on the sand speeder. And that's because no one I knew, because this was my cousin's game, no one I knew could get past this level. So I never saw anything beyond this level. So like, whether I was playing it, whether he was playing, whether everyone else was playing it, couldn't get past it. I mean, years now later, I'm like, okay, I don't really know why everyone had too much of a problem with this game. Now, granted, I was like 5 at the time, and I had never played a video game before. But it was just interesting. Now, that being said, the game definitely is a bit tough. I mean, it's not like the hardest thing, but it is definitely it's definitely a hard game, just because of some stuff. I mean, like, the biggest problem I've had with trying to play this game is falling to your death, and so even a couple times I've been trying to do some platforming and just going, all right, cool, should be able to get past this part, and then I make a wrong fall and I keep falling and falling and falling, and depending on where I land, I could either hit a ledge below me or I fall to my death. And that has been the case several times, especially if I get hit by an enemy and I just fall down. And it's like, all right, I don't know where I'm going to end up, but let's hope it's a good place that I land at. And then also, just like, for some of these bosses, they're just so tanky. Like the one you'll see in this clip. Now, like I said, the game's also tough, and I haven't played this game in a long time, but like, he just takes so much damage, and his hitbox as well is just very hard to get right without him actually hitting you when you're trying to hit him. And one thing that is actually cool about the Super Return of the Jedi, and also the game, all 3 games, which is the Super Trilogy, is that you can actually choose characters for each level, or at least for most levels. So like, for this level here, you can be Luke, Chewie, or Leia. So like, it does provide variety, and each character has their own, skills and weapons and stuff like that. So it's definitely it got variety there. So yeah, I've never beaten this game before, and I mean, I might still try and come back to this at some point. I'm not really hard pressed to, especially since there are other games I could be playing. But yeah, it was good to go back and revisit this one at least. So I'm glad I did that at least. Now, the main game, which probably no one's surprised about, that I've been playing has been more vampire crawlers. And for the most part, it has been partially just grinding stuff there, and then eventually I did end up going to the final area of the game, which actually I was wrong. It's not actually the final area, because there is at least one more level. It's like a basement area in that area, so I do have to go to that. So I've beaten that part, at least so far, and it's been getting better to a degree. I mean, I guess I should say it's been getting easier because there are newer things that you can unlock. And I think one of the best things you can unlock is the jeweler in the game, which essentially allows you to increase or decrease the rarity of gems that you find in a run. And gems are essentially just add-ons for any of the cards you find, and so they each have a different ability. Like, if you play a card, it can give you defense. If you play a card, it could increase the attack of that card. It could not have a mana cost. It could copy itself whenever you played it. So like, there are a lot of different gems that you can use, and they each have their own different abilities. The best one, or at least one of the best ones that I found, is the wild card, the wild gem. And essentially what that one does is, it doesn't have a mana cost, and additionally, because it's a wild card, you can use that in a combo, and it'll count wherever it is in that combo. So you don't need to, so like, it'll just continue to add on to the sequence that you have going on there, which is great, because that means essentially, if you keep finding rare gems and you just keep stacking them with your cards, you can essentially just keep going, all right, I'm going to add this to my combo, keep building up the combo, keep dealing more damage because there's a combo, keep adding more cards. I draw a card that allows me to, or I play a card that allows me to draw more cards, and because of the fact that it's part of a combo, it instead of drawing one card, I can draw 15, and that essentially just allows me to get more of the cards which have the rare gem, and I can keep just adding on, and it's even gotten to the point where there have been several bosses that I found where they can't even get a move in because I'm just doing a combo after combo after combo.
Nice.
So the rare gems are definitely very useful in that sense. So I'm definitely glad that the jeweler, I mean, it kind of makes the game a bit broken to a degree, but you do actually have to actually build up your deck before it's actually that viable. But when you can actually do it, it's just so satisfying to pull off those runs. But yeah, so I just have the one last area to go through, and then I think I have just 3 achievements overall, but at least 2 of them I know are related to that basement, so that'll be easy to knock out, and then whatever's left is going to be pretty much simple to do after that. At least until if they treat it like Vampire Survivors and add in new updates with more content, then I have to go back and do that. But at least I'm almost done with this with this version of the game so far. And unlike Vampire Survivors, I was able to do it only in around 30 hours, so that's a whole lot better than doing that. But yeah, so that is everything that I've been playing this past week.
All right, very cool. Yeah, I mean, like, the more I see of Vampire Crawlers, the more I'm like, yeah, this would probably be something I would enjoy. Once again, not in a rush to play anything like it, but it looks like something that is actually fun that I would probably have a good time with. So going back to Alan Wake, yeah, this one is it's very, very interesting, and it's one I actually kind of almost want to go back to, just like replay it, because I don't know, it's just interesting. And of course, one of the things that I really like is how Control brings Alan Wake into the universe. I mean, really all the Remedyverse games are connected, but just the way that Alan Wake came into Control I thought was really cool. And of course, that was before Alan Wake 2 came out, so there's all that. But yeah, eventually I honestly, right now I'm really more than anything just hoping that eventually whatever contract Remedy has with Epic will be like done to where they can actually release Alan Wake 2 on Steam, because I definitely would like to get it, but I don't want to use Epic for a whole host of reasons that I won't get into for the nth time. But yeah, good stuff. All right, so as for what I've been playing, first I'll kind of mention the things that are a little bit smaller. One of those, I actually got back into Ace Attorney Investigations 2. I really didn't play very much of it. I basically just played, like, I didn't even finish the prologue for the first episode yet. Or, well, the prologue is the prologue, but yeah, like, I just played, like, a little tiny bit of it. I was looking for something to play on Sunday, and my battery was running low on the Steam Deck, so I could only do so much Pragmata, but I just pulled out the Switch and decided to play a little bit of it, and didn't get to play very long. Played a little bit more today, really just to record footage, but yeah. I'm hoping to actually kind of get back into that one sometime soonish, because I did really enjoy the previous games, and it is a nice change of pace, but we'll kind of see when that happens. But then there was a decompilation that came out of Super Smash Brothers for PC. So, a couple things to note about this. First and foremost, apparently, like, there was a decompilation being worked on, and it got to, like, 95%. And then someone used what was there and used AI to finish it out. And so it technically works, but it needs work. So, like, resolution-wise, it looks good. Like, it seems to run well. I only tried it on the Steam Deck, but there's no option, there's no, like, menus to be able to remap controls, change, the resolution scaling, do anything with any settings whatsoever. And there's no way to clearly be able to tell what the controls are actually, what the control layout is actually supposed to be. It's like, okay, A and B are the same. And the rest of the controls, I kind of just had to press the buttons to figure out where they're mapped, because it's basically just, it's almost like I'm emulating the game. I mean, it's running at 60 frames per second. Steam Deck, I'm presuming, was probably running 720p. But there was no way for me to tell, because it has all the exact same menus as the N64 version. So as you'll see watching this, because of the fact that the controls were hard to figure out what exactly was what compared to what the original was, and of course, there's the muscle memory and whatnot that messes with me a little bit. I was having trouble figuring out jumping initially, and it's like, okay, it seemed like the only way I can jump is either with one of the joysticks. Well, actually, that seemed like that was the only way I could jump, was with one of the joysticks, whereas whenever I played on N64, I always jumped with the C buttons. And there's just a whole host of, like, okay, I'm trying to figure out where these buttons are, and so I end up falling to my death a couple times, and then I'm just making all sorts of dumb mistakes that I probably wouldn't be making if I tried this with the N64 controller, which that's even assuming that the N64 controller works with it, which I haven't had a chance to test that out. But yeah, I might try the N64 controller at some point just to see if it works with the game, but I have a feeling that with this not being fully completed, a full decompilation by people who actually fully know what they're doing, then it probably is just not in the best shape. So realistically speaking, it's probably better to just wait for the full decompilation to come out that is not AI driven, so that you actually have a lot more options and can figure everything out. And I tried remapping through Steam Input, but the problem is that if I don't know what the buttons do on their own, it's kind of hard to remap, and then it was just wonky. But yeah, so the other problem I had with this was also the fact that after a while it actually just crashed on me, and so I ended up having to I think I got to fighting Pikachu, maybe a little bit past that, and then the game just straight up crashed on me, and so I ended up not getting to play very long anyway. But I was doing terrible anyway, just because of the fact that I couldn't quite figure out what the button layout was, and there was no way for me to figure that out apart from just pressing buttons and seeing what happens. So yeah, not really worth it in my opinion yet. But in the midst of trying to figure out what I actually was more interested in playing, or rather, let me back up. I was finding that playing Progmon on the Steam Deck was just kind of like back and forth on whether or not it was worth it, and I knew that I was getting close to a point of like doing boss fight and that sort of thing, but I didn't want to try and do the boss fight on the Steam Deck because I've had mixed results with that. And so I had gotten a game on Steam a while back that I hadn't had a chance to test out, and it's a game that I already had on Switch, but Switch, it's locked to 30 FPS, and I never got very far into it. So I booted it up on the Steam Deck, and that is Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana. So, like I said, I've had this one on Switch for a while. I got a digital probably back in 2021, and I played a bit of it, and I liked what I played, but the problem was, of course, that it's 30 FPS, and so I just figured, okay, I'm going to just give this a shot on Steam Deck. I'm not really sure exactly how much I'll really be playing it right now. It's more just I kind of wanted to check it out. For one, make sure I could actually get it to run at 60, which was pretty easy to do. Couldn't quite max out the settings, but at least not to maintain 60. But I was still able to, with just looking up, best settings, I was able to find the right settings and get it up to locked 60 FPS, and so that worked well. As far as I can tell, there's no way to get it above 60. And At least not that I have found, but I didn't do an extensive amount of research. So either way, but I just decided to play on the highest difficulty, or well, second to highest difficulty. Because I usually what I'll do is like nowadays, if I look at a game, if there is a difficulty related achievement, I will typically try doing either the highest or the second to highest difficulty, depending on, you know, like what the requirement is. Like, for example, with Kena Bridge of Spirits, that's the first one, right? Yeah. Kena Bridge of Spirits, that one has a difficulty specifically related to playing the, I want to say it's master difficulty. I can't remember. It's whatever the highest difficulty is. You have to do that. If you complete the game on that, you get an achievement. But of course, if you get that achievement, then I think it unlocks the, you know, other achievement as well. And so I figured, okay, well, that's what I did on that game. And I still haven't finished it, but I at least have been playing at the highest difficulty. This one, there's the achievement that you need in order to get, it's both for the sake of getting the achievement in general, but it's also the only way to get the true ending is to play it on higher difficulty. And so I went ahead and started it at that at the nightmare difficulty, whereas previously the little bit that I played on Switch, I had only been playing on normal. So there were definitely a few times where I was dying pretty quickly, but at least with some of the bosses that I've faced, it's just basically been like, once I figured out their patterns well enough, it was easy enough to avoid their attacks and then, you know, take the right openings. I do okay on the last minute dodging to get in extra hits. But it's kind of a mixed bag. I haven't quite gotten the timing down to where like I can reliably do it to where I trust myself. It's just more like I do the best I can, and more than anything, I try to just not get hit, because both bosses and regular enemies hit very, very hard and sometimes can just one-shot, even if just like a level above me. So, yeah. But, I mean, the little bit that I played, I like. I know I'm not as far in it as I was on the Switch. But I've only gotten through, there's the tutorial boss at the very, very beginning, and then there's 2 other bosses I faced. So, but I'm playing that exclusively on Steam Deck, and I mean, you know, it looks great, runs great, music's good, all that stuff. So I like what I played, and I mean, I definitely will say that if I, you know, continue this, whether it's in the short term or the long term, it's definitely something I'm going to be playing on Steam Deck and or PC. Probably just Steam Deck, unless I find out that there's a way to get above 60 FPS, because if there's not a way to get above 60 FPS, then there's really not any benefit apart from being able to max out the settings and get, you know, slightly better visuals. But considering the fact that this was originally a Vita game, it's not like, oh, you know, it's not something that's going to be visually the most impressive anyway, regardless of what system you're running it on. So, yeah. And if it's not going to run any better, then there's really no point from that standpoint, since I like playing on the Steam Deck better anyway. But then, of course, obviously, I have been playing more Pragmata. And at this point, I am now, I am at the, I'm basically right before the final boss. I'm in the last area, and I'm like halfway through it. I finished going through all the different training things. I've gotten all the different possible weapons you can obtain, at least in the base game. I don't know about the additional mode that unlocks after you complete the game, whether that, and it's additional like story thing. I'm not sure if that you get additional weapons, because I know that there's at least a couple other ones that you get, or if you get them only in Lunatic difficulty, which my understanding of Lunatic difficulty is that you can't do it on New Game Plus unless you've beaten Lunatic already. So it's not like, oh, I complete the game on normal and then I start New Game Plus on Lunatic and I get to, carry over weapons and everything else. But when you start a new game on Lunatic after playing the other, the base version of the game, whatever difficulty you play at, you do at least get all of the different weapons and everything that you've unlocked previously are still unlocked. You just, as far as I know, they're not upgraded, but you at least still unlock everything. So, assuming I do decide to at some point go through the Lunatic difficulty as well, then I at least will already have all that stuff unlocked, which will save me some time theoretically, but I also won't be as strong. So like I don't know how all that's going to work out from that standpoint. I just we'll kind of play it by ear. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm right near the very end of the game, and I just have a little bit more to complete for that final area, and then of course I have the final boss. And I've heard the final boss is very difficult, kind of a pretty big difficulty spike, but I've also seen some strategies that could potentially make it easier. So it's one of those where I'm like, okay, we'll just kind of play it by ear and see what happens. I'll do the best I can, and hopefully I'll end up finding that it's not nearly as difficult as some people have made it out to be. Because some people that I've heard say it's really difficult also are people who they'll play on the easiest difficulty and they'll bow out if they can't get past the boss after a bit. And so it's like, I don't know if they're necessarily the best person to listen to from that standpoint. I mean, I'm sure the boss is reasonably difficult, but I also I don't know how much I can say based on certain people telling me that it's overly difficult, if I should actually believe that it's like really that hard, or if it's just because, I mean, it's completely subjective, It's kind of like I was looking at the some people, looking online at what people said about Ease 8 with the playing on Nightmare difficulty for that achievement and the true ending and all that. And from what people were saying, some people were saying that, oh, this is like really difficult. This is like, I've beaten all the Dark Souls games and this is harder than that. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess we'll just kind of see what happens, because I find that usually, playing at a higher difficulty, yeah, initially it's going to be really hard, and it's one of those things that the more you get used to that higher difficulty, the more it's kind of like, okay, this is just the way the game plays. It's kind of like when I played Ghost of Tsushima, the first time, I went straight to hard difficulty, mostly because I knew that from having played the Infamous games, you had to play on hard difficulty to get the platinum. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to start right away with hard and, play on that from the get-go. And initially there were definitely times where it was like, this is super hard. But then after a while, it wasn't too bad, especially when it came to the fact that when it came to playing on PC, where I had a much higher frame rate to work with, which made it significantly less difficult than it was otherwise, or than that it would have been without that it was when it was at 30 FPS. So, but then of course when I tried doing easy difficulty on New Game Plus when I played on PC, is like, wow, this is just too easy and this is boring. So I switched over to Hard Plus instead, and then it was like, okay, this is better. This is feeling more like a good challenge. But yeah, so all that being said, I'm enjoying Pragmata. I don't know. I would say it's possible but not likely that I will be done with the story before I go on my trip. It'll just kind of depend, because I'm working in the office Tuesday, Wednesday this week, so I'll definitely play it during my lunch breaks, but I just don't know for sure exactly how far I'll get, because even if I get to the last boss, there's no guarantee that it's going to be something where I can actually you'll beat it in a reasonable number of tries. But it's one of those things where it's such mixed experiences that people have, and some of it could be skill issues, some of it could be that it really is just that much harder, and I'm just anticipating that it's just going to be that much harder because that's the way games go sometimes. So, but yeah, that's everything.
All right. That's definitely interesting. That with the difficulty spike there, and you said that you can't do New Game Plus on the hardest difficulty for Pragmatic, even unless, or can you do it, like say you had done it on that difficulty originally, can you do it on New Game Plus then, or do you have to or is you cannot do a New Game Plus at all?
You can do New Game Plus, but well, for one, the hardest difficulty is not available until you've beaten the game. So you can't even do Lunatic difficulty until you've actually beaten a game. Otherwise, I would have just started with Lunatic. But once you've beaten the game, Lunatic becomes available to do, but you can't do New Game Plus from a standard mode to Lunatic. You can do New Game Plus on Lunatic. I mean, you can do Lunatic Plus after you've beaten Lunatic for a new game. But yeah, that's the extent of what you can do. So
okay. Well, that's gonna be interesting then, going in fresh. Yeah. So if and when you do that, I wish you the best on that, since you have to start fresh. But at least you'll have an idea on what to expect from the game itself. So that can at least help out on that end. With Ys 8, man, that I have not remembered that game for quite some time, and similar to you, I first got into, or at least I played a little bit of the game on the Nintendo Switch, and that's when I even first heard about the series in general, was because of the Switch port, and how it got a physical release and whatnot. I probably didn't play much more than you had played. It's also been a long time, and I do have it in my library, but I need to go back and start all over again. But what I had played of the game definitely was enjoyable, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is pretty nice. Granted, I because it's been such a long time since I played it, I am very curious just to see the difference from playing back on the Nintendo Switch and then playing it now on different hardware, seeing that type of change, because at the time, that was really much what I was accustomed to. So it's like, oh yeah, this isn't so bad, but then playing that now definitely would be a bit jarring, I would suppose. But yeah, definitely glad you brought that up. And I'm a bit of a mixed bag type of guy when it comes to the true ending of games being locked behind the hardest difficulty, because while I do appreciate that there's a reward for people who put in that effort, I do think that maybe that's a bit too far to a degree. I know, it's weird, because I know that with Star Wars Shadows of the Empire, you couldn't get the true ending unless you played on, I can't remember if it was the second hardest. I think it was the second hardest or the hardest difficulty of the game. You couldn't get the true ending, and oddly, and then the craziest thing was for Superman 64, you couldn't progress through the game unless you raised the difficulty for each part of the game near the end. So the second to last level, you had to increase it to at least, it had to be, I think, at least medium difficulty, and then for the final level, it had to be on hard, and you couldn't decrease it at all or anything like that. So it's I don't know why such a thing would exist, but I guess with the true ending, it's not as bad as actually have to change the game itself in order to keep playing. But yeah, it's a weird thing. I guess it's not. I don't know. I don't know if I would rather have to do certain things in the game to get the true ending over just playing through the game on a hard difficulty without having to do anything extra, because I know, like, with Arkham Knight, in order to get the true ending of the game, you have to complete it 100% essentially before you can do that. And, like, that's fine and dandy, but with those Riddler challenges and puzzles, like, those are the things that really eat up a lot of time. And so, like, I don't know. So I can get the idea of, like, giving the true ending to people who put in the effort, but I feel like sometimes it's like, is that too much, guys? So hopefully the master difficulty for Ys 8 isn't too crazy. I mean, I know you said, like, it's definitely gotten some bite to it, but hopefully it's not, like, too ridiculous and out of hand. And then Smash 64. Yeah, I was when you first mentioned that to me in Discord, I was like, oh wow, that sounds pretty good. I'd like to try that. But then when you mentioned that the issues it was having, I was like, yeah, that probably sounds like I should wait. Something I did think about, I want to ask you, did you try using the right stick at all?
Yeah, the right stick was just for jumping.
Okay, yeah. I was like, I was hoping that necessarily wouldn't be the case, but I was just wondering, because, like, I feel like because that technically would have been the C, the C pad essentially, that could have been it. But I'm like, yeah, the C is, I mean, as buttons, those were fine, but as an actual stick, or at least in this case, having to use for jumping and not, like, moving the camera around, it definitely, I can definitely see that being a bit of a pain to work with. But yeah, I will definitely be looking into when the actual full 100% human-made decomp is finished, because I would like to, go back to that game and play that. And as many mods as there were for the emulated version, I can only imagine how much easier it would be for making mods for, a full native PC port. Because, I mean, people are already doing, like, adding in other characters and expanding upon it, and sort of like making it almost like having the roster of Melee in the N64 version. So I'm like, if you're able to do that with the emulated version, I can only imagine how crazy you can go with doing a native PC port. So that's cool. That's cool. But I mean, I can wait for that. Obviously, once it's finished, it's 95% done. But yeah, good stuff.
Indeed. All right. Well. All right. So now let's get into the news. And we've got a few interesting topics tonight, but I think I want to start with the one that's a little more near and dear to our hearts as PC gamers. And that is regarding the Steam Machine and or Steam Frame that may be releasing actually very soon. So on Twitter, sadly, it's Bradley. Brad Lynch has put out a tweet. Basically, he monitors, like, shipments that come in and that sort of thing to different companies, and saw with Valve that they have a bunch of things that just came in recently that were labeled as game consoles. Now, the initial thought that a lot of people had was that this is probably the Steam machines. It's been argued by others that it could potentially actually be the Steam Frame rather than the Steam Machine, because game consoles are taxed higher are tariffed higher, and the Steam Machine is technically, is considered a PC, and PCs don't have the tariffs on them in the same sense. And then the Steam Frame also has, because the Steam Frame uses the low power RAM, that's in much lower demand, which means that it's cheaper and should be easier to bring in sooner than the Steam Machine would be able to. However, none of this is confirmed. All we know is that this stuff came to Valve, labeled as game consoles, and beyond that, it's all speculation. But considering what happened with the Steam controllers, not long before they were actually revealed. We figured it has to be one of these. So, what are your thoughts?
Oh man, so I mean, my bubble was slightly burst when I saw that one video saying that it probably isn't the Steam machine, and I'm just like, oh no, I wanted to be the Steam machine. On the other hand, though, I'm like, that's kind of fine if it's not the Steam machine, because, you know, could still just, you know, save a little more money before then, not just like go ahead and try to worry about getting it right away. So like there is that, but then also in the video it was also mentioned that it could also possibly be more shipments of Steam Decks,
Right.
which, you know,
Yeah.
Valve has been short on supply for quite some time now. So I'm like, all right, that's viable. I can believe that too. So it's really up in the air, I would say, at this point as to what actually is coming in, and it won't be until we do see or hear anything from Valve, for that matter, that we would know. In light of all the evidence that was presented, you know, like with the Steam machine being listed as a PC, and Valve, you know, listing the Steam frame as a game console, I could see it being the Steam frame. I think that's definitely likely. At the same time, I could also still see it just being more shipments of the Steam Deck OLED.
Right. Yeah.
But you know, it is possible. Like, you know, like it is possible, like you said, with the Steam frame using the low powered, you know, RAM. It's the demand isn't as high for that. So if that's the case, then, you know, it would be nice if that's the Steam frame. And if that is the case, I'll still go ahead and, you know, go ahead and get that pre-order if it comes in soon, or if it's if it's announced soon. And I do hope that if that's it, that means we will hear something relatively soon. Like maybe, well, about how long would you say it was from the shipment of controllers that was announced to the Valve actually announcing it? Like, about how long would you say? Like maybe 3-4 weeks or more?
You know, I'm not sure. I'm look back through our chat history and see if I can find where we first talked. Actually, you know, it'd probably be easier to just look in the show notes and see where we talked about that the first time.
Yeah, because I'm like, I wonder if it is the Steam frame. I'm thinking maybe within that roughly that same time frame, we could probably hear something from Valve, especially, you know, if people decide, hey, I'm gonna leak stuff like I did with the with the Steam controller.
So the time that we heard about the Valve getting a shipment of controllers was when 3 episodes ago.
Wow. So that was barely
and it was
recent.
so it was basically 2 weeks from the time that the controllers arrived in a shipment to the point that we actually got the official reveal. So,
wow.
Presumably it'll be sometime this month.
that is very interesting then. That's very cool. And, you know, hopefully that's the case. It would be nice to see that happen. So man, just gotta get ready then and start preloading my Steam wallet for that one then. But yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see what happens here. And again, it could be just that Steam Decks, which, if that's the case, it's great. You know, I know there are still people who have wanted to get one but haven't been able to. Like, I know that one coworker, she actually has been trying to get a Steam Deck for a while, and she hasn't been able to get one. So if this is the Steam Deck, then that will be an opportunity for her to pick one up. But if it's the Steam frame, I'm still gonna go ahead and get one. It would be great to go ahead and do it, and especially with the last issue that I had with trying to work with my index, you know, having the Steam frame would be great to just go ahead and start jumping back into into the VR stuff, and also without having to even just use the PC. I mean, I can connect to the PC for better performance, but if I just want to play games on there, I can still do that as well, and that do stuff there. So that'll be good as well. So all in all, we'll have to wait and see, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. Hopefully within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, for sure. I'm like so mixed on this because on the one hand, selfishly, I kind of want the Steam frame a little bit more because of the fact that that's something that I personally would be using. Whereas the Steam machine, I'm really getting it for my kids. That's the major reason that I want to get it. But the other thing is that I just spent a good chunk of money because, long story short, and I didn't mention this when I was talking about my updates earlier, but I just ordered a bunch of stuff like effects pedals and preamp and stuff that's basically to help my guitar sound better for Sunday mornings, because there's a pretty big difference between how my guitar sounds versus the other guy's guitar, and it's mostly because he's using effects pedals and that sort of thing, and it makes his sound like more full, I guess you could say. It's just like some effects that, I mean, it's not like anything like distortion or anything. It's just stuff to make the guitar sound like brighter and more full and everything. And it's something I've been, knowing that I probably needed to do, because it's like, I know that there's a big difference in the sound between the two, and it's noticeable, when I'm playing versus when he's playing, because mine is just completely, doesn't have any enhancements to it, whereas his has all these extra enhancements. So I just invested a bunch in that, and yes, it's a one-time purchase that's painful up front, but will be beneficial to me in the long run, much like my guitar was in the first place that I bought 20 years ago. And thankfully nowhere near as expensive as my guitar was. But point is that because of that, like, I don't want to spend I'm a little more like, I'd be okay with the Steam machine not coming right away, because I have a feeling it's going to be really expensive. And like, if I'm being honest, I'm not sure if I'm going to buy a Steam machine day one anymore, unless it ends up being a really good price. Now, if they actually released both at the same time and did that bundle, then it would be like, I might be willing to do that, but I'm hesitant because I don't really want to spend that much money all at once. But at least with the Steam frame, theoretically, it shouldn't be as expensive, because on its own, it really can't do a whole lot in terms of, I mean, it doesn't have a lot of power. Like, it can play some games natively, but for the most part, it's really just streaming the games. But of course, it's supposed to be basically no latency between the two, and the technology with, the eye tracking and everything is supposed to be really good and all that. And I definitely it would be cool to test out the handful of VR games that I actually have. And even if for some reason I can't do the VR games, at the very least I could, like, theoretically I might be able to do something along the lines of, like, if I wanted to play Half-Life Alyx, which I did end up grabbing on a sale at one point. Theoretically, as long as I have the controllers, I should still be able to play the game on my PC. Just, I mean, it would be 2D, so it wouldn't be quite the same, but I could still, do all the controls and everything. Although I guess you have to have the headset for the tracking of the controllers, so that wouldn't necessarily work. But it might be possible to make it just 2D. I don't know. Regardless, I do have a handful of VR games that I've gotten over the years. It's, all been free stuff, with the exception of Half-Life Alyx. And I would be interested in checking those out. But even if I can't do that, I can do the, projecting the screen out in front of you and all that. That would be pretty cool. But yeah, it's like that sounds more appealing to me. And I'd also be perfectly fine if this was just a Steam Deck restock, because I'm not buying another Steam Deck anytime soon. And so it's like, okay, I can just save up and, eventually grab something. But if it ends up being the Steam machine, I may end up just deciding that I'm just going to hold off and wait and maybe just buy one next year or something. Because the kids don't need one right now. And considering the fact that it wouldn't be here before, you know, our trip or even while we're on our trip. So they wouldn't be able to take advantage of it. Yeah, it would be nice for them to have it, but it's also not something that's like a need. It's just more like, okay, this would be nice. Realistically, probably if anything, I would want it to be something that was available for, that could be, you know, put out in the garage when they want to, once we get that set up as kit space, which I forgot to mention with the garage sale. We didn't sell much. We didn't have a whole lot of people come by. We sold a handful of things, and then we basically just donated the rest of it to Goodwill because it was just like, okay, we want to get rid of all this stuff, and garage is not quite as cleared out as I would like it to be, but we still got rid of a lot. So, anyway. But yeah, so Steam Machine. If that's what's coming, I guess I'll just have to wait and see what the price is to determine whether or not it's going to be a day one thing or if I'm just going to wait on it until later. And I mean, at least if I did decide to wait on it, assuming that they're not like giving a good deal on it from the get-go, it should be cheaper whenever RAM prices go down. So basically, it's unless they decide to start off on a cheaper price and take the loss initially with the hope that things will improve, then it should go down whenever prices go down for RAM. But yeah, I mean, I definitely had forgotten to mention the possibility of it being the Steam Deck restock. And I mean, that would definitely it would be great for people who really want to get a Steam Deck still. It's just, you know, for me, it's great in the sense that it's like, I don't have to worry about spending that money.
Yeah.
I don't even have to think about that. I can just be like, yeah, I'm good. We're good. We're golden. But, I mean, either way, like, I'm definitely looking into it. I'm hoping, though, that Valve definitely has a limit of 1 per account.
Yes.
Because
they
need to figure something better out than the system that they had today. And I mean, I think realistically, we could kind of talk about that a bit since we're already talking about Steam hardware anyway. The system that they had today just wasn't good. It was bad. And, yeah, I mean, I remember there were some issues with like, people initially, you know, putting in their reservations for the Steam Deck LCD, and you know that definitely took a while as well, but that one still, people could keep putting them in. It wasn't like there's only a limited number. It's just you were stuck in essentially a queue of waiting until it was your turn to be able to order yours. And I'm glad in a sense with the Steam controller that it's not that way, because then it's not like, oh, I have to wait months before I have to buy my Steam controller. Instead, you know, I was able to order one today. But then for all the people who wanted to get a Steam controller and they were out of stock by the time they were able to, I mean, even if they got them in their carts ahead of time, you know, they were completely out of stock within half an hour. And it was ridiculous.
Yeah, that definitely was, I would say, the worst the worst launch that Valve has had. And I mean, I almost want to say that I kind of wish that with, and I mean, I can understand why it's not like the same type of thing, at least, you know, hardware spec wise, as with the like the Steam Decks, since this is an accessory rather than like a main actual system. So I'm hoping, I kind of hope that while it will suck to have to wait, I kind of hope that when the Steam Frame and Steam Machine come back, that they do actually re-implement that queue system, because I think it just like lightens, it just relieves the burden of thinking, oh man, if I don't get it in time, you know, I won't be able to get one at all, and I have to wait who knows how long for the next you know, availability to come in. Whereas with, you know, the queue, it's like, all right, cool, make my reservation now, whenever Valve emails me, I have 2 whole days to put in to like actually complete the order. So it's like, yeah, I can take my time, it's like, all right, no big deal. So like that's fine. So I kind of hope they might re-implement that system. And I mean, whatever they did today just was not working at all.
Mhm.
Because I mean, not only was it, just impacting people trying to get the controller, it was a store-wide issue where people who were just going to buy games couldn't even check out because that same issue was affecting them as well, which is just ridiculous. And I mean, I've had issues before in the past where I couldn't complete an order with buying something on Steam, and possibly, I don't think any of it had to do with the hardware, but mainly it was just like having issues with my with my card, just because my bank was like, hey, we want to make sure this isn't fraud or anything like that. And I'm like, no, it's completely fine, guys. I've purchased from Steam before multiple times. It's completely fine. So like I've had issues with that, which is why I at one point just like, I'm just gonna go ahead and purchase some gift cards instead, and just like use it that way before I like just did something else entirely. And so like I didn't have issues after that. So like on that end, if it's like a card issue, I'm like, all right, I can understand if your credit card company is like, hey, this activity seems suspicious.
Right.
But if you're using your Steam wallet, money that is implemented in Steam itself, there's no reason why you should have any issues at all. So Valve really dropped the ball on this case, and it's something that they really need to fix and address by the time the Steam Machine and Steam Frame release, because as much of a bloodbath it was today, it's going to be even crazier, because not everyone is going to necessarily just want the controller, but more people are definitely going to be interested in getting the actual machine itself, which would come with the controller as well.
Yeah.
Or just get the headset. So that's going to be. I hope that today was a good learning lesson for Valve. Unfortunately, consumers paid the price on that end, but hopefully they learned a very valuable lesson here on how to get things fixed in time for their next launches.
The one thing that just came to mind is that regardless of what they were, I guess I should back up. Unless it's just a Steam Deck restock, if it is either the Steam Machine or the Steam Frame or somehow both, Half-Life 3 could be announced at the same time that they announce those. We could finally officially get that announcement, because we know it's coming. It's just a matter of when, and it seems like from everything we've heard and just all signs point to this is coming at the same time as the Steam Machine and Steam Frame launch. And like, I know that Valve's goal was to have these out first half of 2026, and we're still in the first half. So they could announce it, even if they announce it, in end of May and say it's going to be this date that these things are available. They could announce at the same time Half-Life 3 is launching the same day. And so for me, of course, that's exciting, because even if I don't get any more hardware, I can get Half-Life 3, and I would say it's just about guaranteed that they will have optimized it to where it should run on the Steam Deck. Now, is it going to run better than 30 frames per second? That's yet to be seen, because I don't know how Source 2 games do on the Steam Deck. But even if it's not, it should still run reasonably well. I'm sure it's going to be optimized well enough to run properly on the Steam Machine. It should run at 60 FPS on the Steam Machine. And I mean, there's no reason why it couldn't anyway. You optimize the game properly, there's no reason why it won't run that well. Just really no reason at all. And obviously because of the fact that Valve actually, considering how much time they put into this game, how long it's been since the last installment came out, even if you count Half-Life Alyx, which, to me, that doesn't really fully count, since that's like in between. I'm pretty sure that's in between Half-Life. Yeah, it's between Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2. So it's like, it's been a really long time. They have to have this properly optimized, and I'm sure they will. I don't have any reason to think otherwise because of, Valve's track record. So, yeah.
You just mentioned something now, or you bring up Half-Life 3, and now I'm wondering if this would be a thing, because I know some games do this, or some games have done this before. I'm wondering if there could be two versions of the game, or essentially you buy the game, but it has two versions that come with it, which essentially is just, the base game, you're playing the game, but also a VR mode as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to have a
cool.
VR mode.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm like,
I mean, obviously that's just a theory. I haven't heard anything to suggest that's for sure, but I think that it's going to happen.
I think that would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I would definitely be interested in that as well. I mean, I would much rather not play it in VR, but I wouldn't mind trying it out that way. It's like Half-Life Alyx. Yes, I'll play it in VR because it's specifically a VR game, but I would much rather just not play it in VR unless I just find that the experience is so great with Half-Life Alyx that I'm like, I want to experience this with Half-Life 3 as well. But even then, it would probably be more like I'd do if I was going to do a repeat playthrough, I'd try it out in VR, and first time I would just be playing mouse and keyboard.
Yeah.
I mean, in many ways it's exciting times, and it's also like I wish that this had come during a time when we weren't dealing with the RAM crisis. And
yes.
Because it's like, yeah, obviously it would be hard to get regardless, but the RAM crisis, of course, just really makes the pricing the main issue more than anything else. Because I'm sure that if the RAM crisis was not a thing, they probably would have done a really good bundle kind of deal, with all three things. And as it stands now, even if they have a bundle, unless they take a loss on it, it's probably going to be expensive. I know I will not spend more than $800 on a Steam machine. And $800 is like the very top of my limit, how much I'm willing to spend. And even then, probably only if the Steam frame is not that expensive, because I'm not spending $800 on a Steam frame. I don't think that's worth it. The Steam machine, I think, is a little more worth it because of the fact that it does have enough processing power to actually be usable for a lot more games. But the Steam frame, it's like you're very limited on what you can do from that standpoint. So, yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into our next topic, and I will let you decide which one you want to cover.
Oh man, they're both. All right, I guess we can get started with the ridiculous system specs that for these games. All right, so recently the system specs for two games, the first one being Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight and Blood of the Dawnwalker, were released, and they're definitely something to say the least. So obviously we've talked about Lego Batman in the past, but as far as Blood of the Dawnwalker, that one is a game that is coming out, and it's made by some of the devs for Witcher 3, made their own studio, Rebel Wolves, and they've recently announced the specs for that. So I guess I'll start off with the system specs for Lego Batman. So Lego Batman, on paper, it sounds like it's not that bad because it says, hey, for CPU, you need an i-Core i5-9600K or Ryzen 5 3600. You need Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. That is not the minimum. No, that's the minimum. That is the minimum. I'm sorry. That is the minimum. And then also, you need a GeForce RTX 2070, 8 gigabytes, or an AMD Radeon RX 5700 XT, or an Intel Arc A7070 16 gigabyte card. Then you need Windows 11. You need 50 gigs of space, and you need 16 gigabytes of RAM. And then the recommended specs, though, are an Intel Core i7 2700K or AMD Ryzen 7 7700X. NVIDIA for the GPU. Oh, also I forgot, it needs 32 gigs of RAM. And then for the graphics card, you need an RTX 3080 or an Radeon RX 6800 XT. And additionally, here's the real kicker. These system specs are taking consideration frame generation. Yeah. And so if you're using, I can't remember what it with the frame generation, it's to get 30 frames per second on the minimum, and then for the higher end, even with like the 4K, it was saying to get 60 FPS. Now, sure, you could be saying it's maxed out, but why you need that powerful of hardware to play a Lego game is what? Now, I've got a lot of thoughts on this, and actually, I'll also go ahead and quickly talk about Blood of the Dawnwalker specs as well. Now, it says that the minimum specs required for this game are a RX 3050 GTX 1070 or an AMD RX Vega 56 or an ARC A580. Then you also need for a processor an Intel i7 A700K or AMD Ryzen 7 3700X. But the recommended settings require an i5 13600 or a Ryzen 9 7900X. And then you need a RTX 5060 or a 6800 XT. And then the highest, if you want to play the game, it absolutely requires an RTX 5090 to reach to play the highest tier. You need absolutely nothing less than an RTX 5090. And it's like, what? Now, I have quite a bit to say about both of these games here, but before I do that, what are your thoughts on this?
All right, so first, I'm going to talk about Blood of the Dawnwalker, just because this is one that was like, and if I got the title, maybe I'm remembering the title wrong. Did I get the title of that correct, or am I remembering is it called Blood of the Dawnwalker?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Blood of the Dawnwalker. Okay,
I was just making sure because like I was second guessing myself.
I'm sorry. I mean, technically it's called. The Blood of Dawnwalker.
The Blood of Dawnwalker. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, regardless, this one was one that when I saw it, I was like, this game looks really cool. Looks like something I would really enjoy, but the specs are out of control. A 5090. That's completely inexcusable. There is absolutely no excuse to ever require a 5090 for max settings. No, like absolutely not. You cannot ask people to have a $2,000 graphics card, $2,000 plus graphics card to be able to get, 4K 60 with ray tracing, essentially?
Yeah, essentially.
It's like, it'd be one thing if it was saying, like, if you want 4K 240 or, even 4K 120, maybe I could understand that a little bit, but there's no reason to even put that on a spec sheet. I can't tell if this is just lazy optimization, like they just didn't even want to take the time to optimize it, and so they're just saying, okay, if you use this highest end graphics card, you're going to be golden. Or if it's actually just like complete incompetence. And I'm guessing it's probably a combination of incompetence and laziness on their part, which is disappointing because the game looks great. I mean, you know, from what we've seen, it looked like something that would be really good. But if that's how poorly optimized it is, at least on the PC side, I don't know what it's going to be like on consoles. It's just completely inexcusable. And like, I'd be really curious with both this and the Lego Batman game, how they're going to run on consoles. You know, are they going to use frame generation in order to do it, at least in the case of Lego Batman? I mean, honestly, I would not be surprised in the least if they're better optimized on consoles. And consoles are just going to run better without frame generation. And it's just basically like these developers didn't even bother to take the time to try and optimize for PC. But of course, you know, it's yet to be seen. So, Blood of the Dawnwalker 5090 is ridiculous. There's no excuse. There's absolutely no excuse for that. That is completely inexcusable. Now, on the side of Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight. So, some things I have to say about this. First of all, of course, when we saw this game initially, we were both very excited about it because it looked fantastic. It looked like basically you have a Batman Arkham game combined with a Lego game. And it's like you have all this great stuff together in one package. But then we find out about the system requirements, which the fact that to get 1080p 30 frames per second, and that's with frame generation enabled, so presumably it's running at 15 frames per second and then 30 with frame gen. It's like, no, the latency on that, the input delay is going to be insanely bad. It is going to be so bad. And so, like, I'm just wondering how much of this is this incompetence in terms of how the game was developed? I mean, obviously Unreal Engine 5 is certainly part of the problem, but my question, what I'm really wondering is this like, this is the actual requirements, or is it more like we tested it on this low end hardware, we turned on frame generation, and then, you know, and we capped it at 30 FPS, and this, you know, all this other stuff, when in reality, if they actually just run the game without frame generation, without FSR, it's still going to do 1080p 30. I mean, like, if it's just a matter of incompetence in terms of how they tested, then that's one thing. But if it is, in fact, that this is what it actually requires in order to get this, I mean, you have to use frame generation in order to do that, especially when it's only frame generation up to 30 frames per second. That's completely unacceptable. And I can't even begin to understand this. Like, in some ways, this sounds like this is basically as bad as, well, no, it's worse than Gotham Knights was when Gotham Knights launched. And Gotham Knights was pretty bad. It ran very terribly from everything people have said. Now it runs great, especially once they removed Denuvo. That made all the difference in the world. I mean, it's like now the game runs fantastic on PC. Runs way better on PC than it does on consoles. But back then it ran better on consoles because of the fact that consoles weren't using Denuvo, and of course it just hadn't been optimized on PC at all. I think it was only getting like barely 60 FPS, if 60 FPS, with the 4090 from, I remember VG Fight School talking about that. It was just absolute garbage. And now, like I said, it runs amazing. Runs really, really well. And it's not a bad game, all things considered. But this one just, it's so bad. The system requirements are so bad that unless we find out that it's really just a matter of incompetence in testing and that it actually runs on a potato, well, it's not going to run on a potato, but, you know, that the system requirements are not an accurate representation, and then in reality, if you run them with those specs, you get all that without frame generation, without using upscaling, then it's a whole different story. Because these specs requirements are not unreasonable if you're not having to use frame generation and upscaling. But if you're having to use those things, especially when it's, if it's requiring ray tracing and all that, then yeah, that's not good enough. And I can very easily say that I am not supporting this game until they fix it one way or another, because while the game looks amazing in terms of the overall content, there is absolutely no way that I would spend that kind of money on it if it's not even decently optimized. And it needs to be well optimized, but yeah, I'm completely not happy with this. And one of the things that I especially think about is I look back at Batman Arkham Knight, and like I did a test, did some tests for this for my Why I Love PC Gaming video, and then I did some tests after I my PC last year. And like, even with my GTX 980 with 4 gigs of VRAM, I could get a near locked 60 FPS on that game, and it still looked great. Yes, it was running 1080p, but it looked great on 4 gigs of VRAM. Ran just fine, looked great. Then when I did it on my 2080 Ti, I was getting an average of 120 frames per second with all the bells and whistles at 1440p native. And then when I tested it on my 7900 XTX, I was getting an average of, I think it came out to like 190 something frames per second was the average. I mean, and that's with everything maxed out. Granted, it didn't have any of the NVIDIA specific effects, but it still looks really amazing. It's on Unreal Engine 3, a modified Unreal Engine 3. It looks incredible, has a bunch of effects going on, and yeah, the average, I'm looking at the benchmark right now, is 193 frames per second. So with all of that being said, it's like there is, I don't know, it's just such a shame how things have changed so drastically. How we go from this game that, while it launched terribly, it got fixed, and it's just aged like a fine wine, versus a game that it's launching, it doesn't look really that much better apart from lighting from the engine that they used previously for Lego games, especially like if you look at gameplay footage of, maxed out for the Skywalker Saga that they did for the Lego games. Like, that game still looks pretty good, and Legacy of the Dark Knight really doesn't look that much better than it, and yet it requires way more and runs way worse. So yeah, I strongly dislike where things are in terms of games, but at least the plus side is we have so many other games to play that, I don't feel like I'm missing too much not being able to play this game right away, but I'm definitely not even touching it unless they can actually properly optimize it. So
yeah, both of these games, I would say it's a major disappointment. And then actually, I do want to actually quickly clarify something here. I had initially, at least for the Lego Batman, I was looking at a somewhat outdated system specs. The minimum requirements are actually a Ryzen 5 1600 or an i5 10600K, which I think those two really should be compared, because the Intel is definitely should be more powerful than the Ryzen.
Yeah.
But GPU side, it's really a GTX 960 4GB or a Ryzen or RX 6400 4GB, or an Intel Arc A550 or 580 8GB. So the hardware is lower, but still the performance is definitely still not that great. 30 frames with frame gen is definitely not great. And then also with, same thing with the recommended, with using a 2070 Super, you're getting 60 but with frame generation.
Right.
Additionally, I that's something else I want to mention is like, what is up with needing that power or though actually in the next try I'm also not mixing these two up here. No, never mind. Yeah. So I like you said, it's weird that a Lego game of all things needs this much power just to reach 30 or 60 frames per second, and that's with frame gen. And it's like, what Lego game has ever had this much problem running, at decent frame rates? And like you said, with both games, The Blood of Dawnwalker and Lego Batman, Unreal Engine 5 definitely has a part in this, because we've seen that constantly as a thing with other games. And even though I love Expedition 33, the performance definitely isn't as great as I would like it to be, right. Especially if you want to run it natively, which is definitely a thing there. But if you can't even get 60 frames per second on a 2070 Super without using frame gen, then it's like there's a problem with what you're doing right there. Like, that is insane that you are asking about that from a Lego game. And also, they are charging you $70 for this game. All right, this isn't your regular $60 game. This is $70 that you're paying for this game, and they are giving you poor performance as a result. So if you're buying this, you're insane, because there's no way I would be buying this. Now, with The Blood of Dawnwalker, I have heard people defend this, saying, well, at least we know this is all native. This isn't, upscaling. They're not using frame gen, so, you should appreciate that. While on one hand, yeah, it's nice that we're not having to upscale to get this performance. Why do we still need this powerful hardware to get this performance in the first place? Right. Why not optimize the game so that way it runs well and decently, so we don't have to worry about having issues in the on that matter. And I think it's not necessarily an either or. It's like a both. I can both hate the fact that this game is unoptimized and has AI frame gen implemented. I can also hate that the game is 100% native, no AI stuff. But at the same hand, it still is ridiculous unoptimized performance. So I can hate both. I can easily hate both. So I really don't get it. And also, the one thing I also forgot to mention, or at least really point out to, is the fact that for the recommended specs, they want you to have a Ryzen 9 7900X. Like, you need a high-end CPU just to play this game. Like, what's up with that? Like, I mean, I know that some games could be more CPU intensive, but why do you need a high-end CPU to play The Blood of Dawnwalker? Like, that is insane. Like, after you reach like the minimum, like after you start getting to the recommended specs, then it's like, all right, you need a really high-end CPU to play this game.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's also insane to me. Like, you don't need the latest CPU, but the fact that you need just like top tier, like, and I don't know why you only need like an i5. Like, the i5 is pretty much the same, unless like you need a K version for that. But it's like, I don't know what they're doing there with that comparison. But I just think that's also weird. Like, you need to have a high CPU in addition to having a high GPU, especially if you want to play max settings. So it's insane. And I've just like this whole, right, in both cases situation, it's got me thinking, because I've been sort of planning for my niece and nephew to, build them a PC for when they turn 13 and stuff. And I was like, yeah, here you get your computer. And depending on how I want to do things, I was like, hey, we can build it together. It'll be a nice, fun project to do. And one thing I was thinking, especially in light of the, memory crisis and that impacting things, was like, all right, instead of, maybe getting a couple of, or like waiting out and, getting new hardware, especially like GPUs later on down the line, I could just buy something that's pretty decent now, and it should still be fine, within the next 7 years or so. So I was like, hey, I'll buy a couple of RTX 3080s, or I'll buy a couple of RX 9060 XTs. And I'm like, that should definitely be fine, to wait later, and they'll be able to play games, and they'll probably still be able to do something down the road as well for a while. And it'll be a good for like a starter PC anyway. It's not like they're really doing too much demanding at that point. But I'm thinking to myself, with how, if we're seeing these two games, and one of them being just a Lego game, being so poorly and optimized now, it's like 7 years from now, is like a 3080 just going to be like a GTX 9060 at that point? It's like, oh wow, this game is trash. And it's like, I really thought we were reaching the point where we are both with the limits we're reaching with graphics, how far we're able to really push things, and how we're able to reach new bounds, because like from previous generations, it's been a major leap from one generation to another. But now we're like slowly getting weaker returns. So I'm like, because of that, I'm like, all right, hardware should be able to last longer and last us longer than it has in the past. But now it's like, because the games are just so poorly and optimized, it's like, well, that's no longer a thing. So it makes me wonder sometimes, well, do I really just not go ahead and buy the 3080s now and just wait, or see what happens? So I don't know. It's weird. I mean, on the other hand, though, like you said, there are thousands of games that are out there right now. So even if they don't necessarily play the newest titles, there are still like plenty of games they could be playing, and I could just like, hey, I'll gift you these games and you can play this stuff. So I don't know. It's just weird. And unfortunately, I'm hoping that both of these games get enough pushback, or they don't sell as well as the publishers would like, to the point where they're forced to actually make corrections and optimize these games properly. So that way, people who, and not even people who have lower end hardware, because I can understand the argument of, hey, you're using a GPU that's 10 plus years old, so you shouldn't really expect it to be running games that well. But on the other hand, if you've got decent hardware, why should you have issues running a game? Like, right. And why should you need a 5090 to play the game at max settings? That's just ridiculous. So I'll see what happens, but yeah, all in all, this is just a complete dumpster fire.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, like, when I look at the minimum specs for Batman, for Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight, and like saying the GTX 960, I mean, that is an old card. But why even include it if you're going to require frame generation? You might as well just at least do a higher level card, like say like a 1060 or what have you. Do something that's at least a little, like a 1660. So make that the minimum, because especially since it is running on UE5, it's embarrassing that they even have something that's 30 FPS with frame generation. There's no excuse for that, especially when you have an old card that, while it technically could do frame generation, it really can't. And you should never, ever, ever use frame generation at that lower frame rate. Just never. It is so horrible. Your experience will be absolute garbage. It's not even worth it. Like, you would be better off playing at native 15 frames per second than playing at 15 with frame generation up to 30. Which is sad. Now, you should never play it at 15 frames per second. There are very few games that I would say, like, it's manageable at 15 frames per second. And all of those are very old games that, for the most part, don't require, that extra bit of, better frame rate. Like, I mean, you look at, I can't remember if Ocarina of Time goes as low as 15 or if it's 20, but it's like, yeah, Ocarina of Time, it is very low. But when you've played it that way, in the past, it's like you're just used to it. That's normal. Until, of course, you experience it a whole lot better. I mean, even the 3DS version, I'm pretty sure, is 30 FPS the whole time, and it's noticeably better from that standpoint. And then, of course, if you have the PC recompilation, then you can go as high as your monitor can go easily. So, yeah. But the one thing that has been brought up that's a real plus side, apart from the fact that there's already so many games to choose from as it stands, is that we're getting more indie and AA games lately, which has been really nice, especially because a lot more of those are much better optimized than the AAA stuff that's coming out. And so, it's kind of a mixed bag sometimes. I mean, like, Expedition 33 is not extremely well optimized. It's really, it could definitely be better. It could use some work. But all things considered, especially considering how small of a team they had, even with the contractors they had, from other places helping them out, this is, it still ended up just being an amazing game. And, it was just like what they did with the game, in spite of having a small team and all of that, just chef's kiss. So, but yeah, we have a lot of options, and then of course, now we're getting more and more of the PCD compilations of classic games. Like every day, pretty much seeing something new, and more and more coming out soon. I'm looking forward to whenever Twilight Princess, the decompilation for that finishes up. That'll be really sweet. Of course, there's the Minish Cap one that just became available, and I'm probably going to grab that pretty soon, because I played a decent chunk of Minish Cap on 3DS, because I got it as a free game when they were doing the ambassador stuff for early adopters of the 3DS, but I never finished it. And so having the PC version where it's going to have high frame rates and everything else, it's like, yeah, that sounds nice. And I don't know if it'll have like full widescreen too. I would think it should, because I know like Link's Awakening did for the decomp on that. So yeah. But anyway, so I think we'll just go ahead and call it there. So let's get into our recommendations and dissuasions. Why don't you start us off?
All right, so I've got a couple recommendations. The first one's going to be for vampire crawlers, and that is, once you've made enough progress in the game and have unlocked enough things, decrease the rarity, and specifically if you've unlocked the jeweler, decrease the rarity for the wild gems to common rarity, and increase the rarity of all the other gems, or at least the more common ones, to at least rare or higher. And of course, that'll take you a while since you've got to have money to do that. But at the very least, just decrease the rarity for the wild gems, because those are a real game changer, and inserting them into multiple cards means that you don't have to spend mana to cast those cards. And additionally, it means the fact that you can build longer combos with wild cards. And if you get cards that allow you to draw more cards, then you're able to just create a cycle of spamming cards and keep building up combos, and it's just a whole lot of fun. So that's definitely something I recommend doing as soon as possible. And then my next recommendation is going to be, if you are going to plan on pre-ordering the Steam Machine or Steam Frame, load up your Steam wallet ahead of time if possible, just to make checking out easier. Now, of course, that is assuming that Valve's system isn't having the problems that it had today.
Yeah.
But on paper, it should mean that you won't have to worry about any sort of problems with, trying to put your order in and whatnot, until it's just going to be a smoother process. So do that if possible. If not, then that's fine. And hopefully Valve won't have the issue that they had today. But we'll see what happens when that time comes. But that is all that I have.
All right. Good stuff. Well, my recommendations, first and foremost, if you are going to spend any length of time out in the sun, wear sunscreen. Don't be an idiot like I was, because then you just end up guiding Santa's sleigh tonight. And, guiding Santa's sleigh in May is not great, or so they say. I don't know. But yeah, no, seriously, definitely make sure you wear sunscreen. And sunscreen is also good for if you get sunburn, just putting it on after it helps to heal. Helps to heal the sunburn faster than it does without, which, if I had some sunscreen, I definitely would be putting it on, and I'm hoping that at least some of the redness will go down sooner rather than later. But at least I'll have a tan on my forehead and my nose and my neck and the back of my neck and some spots on my hands. So it'll just be a weird tan. I'm going to recommend yet again Pragmata because it is a fantastic game, whether you play it on console or on PC. From what I have seen, the Switch 2 performance is basically, it targets 60, but it's basically getting around 45 to 60 on average, except in that one open area where I was having issues on the Steam Deck as well, it does drop into the 30s. So it's like, okay, well, it's an issue across the board from that standpoint, but from everything I've seen, that's still pretty good, especially for something that is a portable device. So keep that in mind. Although I think actually that might be the performance when you're playing docked, and then in portable, it's not as good. But regardless, you can still play it there. You can play it on any other console, and you're going to get better performance, maybe outside of the Series S. But great game. And then I'm also going to recommend Ease 8. I haven't played a lot of it, but I do like the game, and it does go on sale every so often. So, whether you're getting it on a console or on PC, you should be able to find a good deal, and I think it's worth it. It's fun. I like it so far. But that is what I have. So, dissuasions.
My dissuasion is going to be, if you were not able to get a Steam controller today, do not buy one from the scalpers.
Yes,
they are
agreed.
ripping you off.
Yes.
And, we've also said in the past how even though you are getting more features than the other basic controllers from, the big three, it still is a pricey controller as it is. Mm-hmm. So you should not be spending more than $100 plus your local state tax.
Yeah.
If you're paying more than that, you're being ripped off.
Yeah.
So do not buy from the scalpers. Wait until Valve has a new shipment, new assortment of controllers, because that should be easier for them to obtain since those aren't using memory. So just wait it out, as well as say, and do not pay the ridiculous prices that scalpers are asking of you.
Agreed. Definitely. Well, my dissuasions, first of all, the current decompilation that is out of Super Smash Bros., the N64 version, that is out on PC right now, as of May 4th, 2026, do not grab that. It's not really worth it, in my opinion. I think it's going to be better to just wait for the full decomp that doesn't use any AI for that process, because the fact that you should actually be able to do a lot more with modifying settings and fixing controls and everything else, because honestly, it's not in the state that it should be, in my opinion. Now, granted, I haven't had a chance to check it out on Windows, and I haven't had a chance to try it out with the N64 controller. But the fact that, for one, you don't have any real options of anything that you can change, it just ends up being essentially like, at that point, you might as well just emulate it, because you're not getting any real benefit. It's still, you're getting 60 FPS, which I'm pretty sure the original game was 60 anyway, and you're getting better resolution, but a lot of times emulation can already do that. And I don't think there's any real benefit right now to the current version of the decomp, and hopefully the full version, when it's completed, will be much, much better. And then I'll be able to glowingly recommend that because the original Smash Brothers is still excellent. But my second dissuasion is do not buy Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight, at least not on PC. I don't know what it's going to be like on console. It might be better there, and, frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being better there initially, even though probably over time it'll get fixed on PC. But at least at launch, do not get it on PC because it is not going to be worth your money. And realistically, most likely down the line, it will be cheaper, it will run better, and it will be the definitive version. It will probably be something much like with Arkham Knight, where it ages like a fine wine. But right now, at least with where it is for the upcoming release, which I believe is at the end of this month, if I remember correctly, it's not worth it, as far as I'm concerned. So,
wholeheartedly agreed. And like you said, there'll probably be a definitive version too, because they'll have DLC and you'll get all the DLC included as well. So
yeah, and it'll be a lot cheaper if I didn't already say that, because
yes,
it will go down in price. So
absolutely.
All right, where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel. I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. No new content yet. Like I said earlier, I'm working on my ABC series of videos, and I'm still, like I said, trying to decide if I want to continue using Alan Wake, but since that's really a more so narrative focus, I might switch to something that is a bit less focused on the story and start over with a new game starting with A. So I'll decide over this week what I want to do there. But we'll see what happens on that end. And then I still also have another hardware video that I'm working on as well. And then I have my other channel, Justin's Bible Blog. That's at Justin's Bible Blog. No new content there either, but I do have another video that I'm sort of starting to get in the works. And then I'll announce when something is being more finalized on that end. But that is everything.
All right, good stuff. Well, as for me, you can find me on my YouTube gaming channel at TheFrozenGamer87. I haven't put out anything new recently, apart from the 24-hour stream I did to raise money through Extra Life for my local children's hospital. But as far, and I should note that if you are interested in donating to that, the link is in the description. The donations still go through all the way to the end of the year. So if you just want to donate towards a children's hospital, feel free to donate through that. 100% of what you donate goes to that. So keep that in mind. And then, but as far as putting out new content beyond that, I still am planning to put together the review for that QRD Ferrex M5 controller that I've had for quite some time, and it has become my daily, it's the controller I use on PC. It is the only controller I use on PC right now, at least until Steam Controller arrives. And it is fantastic. I haven't figured out whether or not I'll be able to do anything with working on the review when I'm at my in-laws' house. I might be able to, because they actually have good internet now. So at least the uploading side and downloading and all that won't be nearly as complicated as it was in the past. But it's kind of a play it by ear thing, because weeks are going to be a little wonky with the scheduling and everything. So it's kind of up in the air. But if nothing else, if I don't get anything done while I'm there, then after I get back, I'm hoping to get to work on that and the long-awaited downsides of PC gaming video. So those are at least in the works. It's just a question of how soon I'm going to get them done. Then there are the YouTube and Rumble channels for the podcast. On YouTube, that's at the Orange Box Podcast. On Rumble, it's not a custom URL, but you can still find it there. Both of those go live every Friday at 7 a.m. Central Time, barring technical issues. Occasionally, I'll find something after the fact that I missed in editing, partially because when I'm listening to edit, I'm usually listening with one earbud, And so sometimes I'll miss something that only comes out when you're wearing 2 because of the way the sound works. So stuff like that, sometimes I have to go back and fix it, re-upload, but otherwise, normally it goes live 7 a.m. Central Time every Friday. And then there is the audio-only version of the podcast, which also goes live every Friday, and that is at 12 a.m. Central Time, barring technical issues or me forgetting to schedule the publishing. So that happens occasionally, but most of the time I remember to do it. If you would like to contact us, you can send an email to the orangeboxpodcast@gmail.com, or you can comment on the video version of the podcast. You can also leave a review on whatever podcast platform you normally listen to the podcast on if you are an audio-only listener. And I haven't looked to see if we have any, but I would imagine I'd probably get notified if we did. So I'll make sure to look it up before next week and see if there's anything anywhere, but I don't think there is. So either way, that should be everything. So, last chance. Any final thoughts?
No, sir.
All right, well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I Am Zerocon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And until next time, Orange Box Podcast out.